I don't think you
We're not
disagree
disagreeing with
me.
them. Brain has, belief has a brain chemistry to it. There's no question about
Right, but you would argue that it's not just that.
I have never defended belief. I started out by saying that belief is a cover-up for insecurity.
Forget about belief. Just human experience is everything is contained in what you mean by just. Okay, does just mean you're taking all of the meaning out of life and just deflating us to a puddle of randomly aggregated proteins that have nothing of what interests a human being through the course of his or her life. And many people assume that a completed scientific understanding of ourselves would somehow amount to that we're just atoms in some temporary arrangement, and everything that we love out of life, including love, it can't be captured by that. And that's just not what science is.
Would you agree, and I think you're almost saying that nothing but, to say something nothing but is never true. It's always both and plus much, much more. And I think we're looking at what is the much, much more.
Yeah,
when
but what you're tending to do with arenas. The much, much more, I think, is profoundly misleading.
Yes.
I mean, that's the rub here.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
He says what you're tending to do with the much, much more is profoundly misleading.
And worse than that, and I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about people, worse than that, it is on a continuum with what the really religiously infatuated and dogmatic are doing, and because you're using the same words,
scientifically dogmatic and infatuated,
but like that move itself is, I mean, so you can say, you can talk about scientific fundamentalism as the corollary of religious fundamentalism. That's just a trick with words. There is no scientific fundamentalism that is analogous to religious fundamentalism, but that's a separate issue.
I think, but by the way,
if I could just, Deepak, if I could just finish this point, the fact that you use words like God and faith with such enthusiasm puts you in you are the shade under which all of these really barbarous forms of religiosity still relax and luxuriate and thrive because you. And I don't mean you personally, I mean religious liberals, moderates, New Age types who still want to talk about God and faith and not differentiate what they're saying from the rest of God talk, which is really what is shaping our conversation about religion in this country and this world.
Of course, you write very beautifully about that, about the fact of religious moderates, as you call them, being coveralls for a whole lot of messy stuff. Okay, yeah. I mean, you write about that. And I don't know that we're talking about these kinds of foci. I think we're trying to talk about what is the future of, if you want to say it's religion, future of God, future of spirituality, as a result of what is coming in through traditional and the new science, what is coming in through education, what is coming in through the fact that I said the world mind is taking a walk with itself. What is it going to start to look like? What would you like it to look like? Because spirituality is not going to go away. I think you'll agree about that. And, however brilliant your arguments are, they are not going to convince people who have a passionate entheosiasmos, being filled with the enthusiasm of the sense of God, because I personally believe it is given to us as part of our human condition. What I'm not hearing here, and I really want to hear, and perhaps we'll get to it with the questions, is what does a robust faith in our human condition, which may or may not include our spiritual beliefs, really begin to look like?
I want to hear your answer to that question.
Oh, my. I must start to write a book. You're going to write a book about that. Well, I think if I say, I'm a person who has been shot at in different countries, have had to dive into trenches, had gas, so I've run into the very things that you're talking about, especially from certain kinds of fundamentalists. And I don't want to see that anymore. What I want to see is people coming together with a common theme, which at this point is the making of a much better world. We have the wherewithal in science, in art, in poetry, in music, the things that we cannot put away. We have the wherewithal in our understanding of social change and human development to really make a better world. What we do not have is what Mr. Tayar used to talk to me about, the lure of becoming. And I don't want to see just the put down of the past. I want to see the lure of what this world could look like, given the fact that we bring these different kinds of minds and not simply, you know, the experts. Because quite frankly, when I'm around the world, here's the great dirty little fact that nobody talks about. 70 to 80% of the people who are really doing the work tend to be women of a certain age, you know, who have that experience. I'd like to see women and men and people from many cultures really beginning to create a vision, a lure of becoming to what this world can be. And I think that might ultimately override the great fractiousness between old points of view.
I think a religion which is devoid of authentic spiritual experience will become diabolical with increasing weapons of mass destruction, weapons of biological warfare, nuclear bombs, but a spirituality-imbued science will actually lead to science healing the ecosystem, the restoration of species, social justice, and the removing of poverty. So I think it's very important to bring a deep spiritual knowing of inseparability, love, compassion, kindness, and peace into our science.
Okay, here's an example. When Mohammed Atta flew the plane into the World Trade Center building, I'm firmly convinced he believed in love and compassion and spirituality and commitment to his belief.
His own
of
tribe.
Course, Deepak, that's
Only
what everybody
for his own
does.
Tribe, but that's not spirituality.
Yes, well, for him it is
a domain of
spirituality.
awareness where we go beyond our tribal identity and experience our universality.
Okay.
That's the fundamental definition of spirituality.
Well, for you, and if you could convince suicide bombers and religious extremists of
Talking
that, then,
about the future.
Okay, all right.
But
Well,
if that was would you be comfortable with the future he's painted?
well, of course, it's much better than what we've got. But why all the jargon?
See, when you
That is
don't
my-
understand the language of a particular school of thought, you call it woo-woo.
No, but you're
You know,
using
I
it in
used
a
to-
way that nobody else uses it.
My patients would think we were speaking woo-woo because we spoke Latin words. You don't understand the language of geology or astronomy, so you're equally at liberty to call it woo-woo. I am engaged in dialogue with people of real science. Last week, I had a conference at my center called Sages and Scientists, where Hans-Peter Duer, who was a colleague and student of Werner Heisenberg, and we engaged in this science, this kind of dialogue, and he did not call it woo-woo.